All right. Well, hello everyone, and welcome to ITRA Trail Talks, the official podcast of the International Trail Running Association. I'm your host, Jeff Campbell, and in today's episode, we're going to be talking about race and ethnicity in trail running. And I am super lucky to be joined by Simba Mugomba, who's a UK-based runner who competes on the road and the trails. He's based in Brighton, right by the sea in the United Kingdom. How's it going today, Simba?
Yeah, not too bad. It's storm season here, so it's not the best time to be by the sea at the moment. It's running and spinning indoors.
I was going to ask, what does storm season mean for an avid runner on the south coast?
Well, usually in Brighton, you have to. You've got the choice of direction. Either you can run into the wind or away from the wind. In storm season, into the wind means you're running backwards. So it's that type of wind.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, both personally and a runner. So sort of, where you grew up, your athletic background, and then how you got into the sport of running.
Not traditionally a runner, so I grew up playing squash. So that was my sport up until I was probably around about sort of 24. I was used to sort of almost nationally ranked, sort of pleased to play for region and stuff. So my sport is squash. That's the sport I'll say I'm good at. How I came into running, I think, was by accident really. I wanted to get back into playing squash again, and I thought the best way to do that, because you need to be fit to play squash, you can't just walk in off the
Yeah.
street. So I thought I'd sign up to do a marathon. That gives me that gives me kind of a quite a specific goal to kind of work towards. That was back in 2017. I signed up to run the Brighton Marathon. I never actually ended up running that marathon that year. I got injured, like just kind of the new runner sort of aches and pains kind of took over. So deferred to 2018. Had a horrendous time. I cramped up at the classic sort of like 35 kilometer point, static for
Yeah.
about half an hour, and then stumbled over the line. I took the opposite the approach to other people, and I really enjoyed myself, and kind of so I signed up to do Amsterdam, where that went a bit better. I ran it in 3.5, and then I signed up to do a longer run. So that was my next race was a 280 kilometer stage race. Well, run in the Azores with a group I'd run with called the Tribe Freedom Foundation. So my running escalated quite into mountain, the kind of ultra running.
Yeah, that's quite a big step up there. What made you feel comfortable making that drastic of a jump into like a giant multi-day stage race from just a couple of road marathons?
I mean, I always relish kind of a challenge. So I think it's one of these things where I'm being outdoors. I'm happy in the wind and rain, and like so. When I saw the initial kind of challenge come up, it just took my fancy for this, and it kind of fulfilled everything I was looking for. It was an incredible 6 days, a tough 6 days, but yeah, it was one of the best experiences of my running career. So I'm always happy to go back to a multi-day. It's a safe space for me.
Okay. And how old are you at this point? Getting into the sport of running.
So I'm 41 in a few weeks' time.
Yeah.
Probably about 35. So I guess like relatively sort of late to running as a sport. But so I think I've always so I had a solid I had a solid kind of like performance background coming into it. So kind of like mindset and kind of I think I adjusted it quite quickly.
Okay. So the competitive juices were in there. You needed a new outlet to kind of direct them.
Yes, as I say, I mean, it happened entirely by accident. Sort of, I never actually went back to playing squash in how I ever anticipated. The mountains and these like city marathons kind of took my fancy. So squash kind of just disappeared into the background.
Okay. Tell me about that. You mentioned the tribe runners. Tell me about that group and sort of the community that you seem to enter into when you got into the sport.
So the tribe was basically a charity called Tribe Freedom Foundation, and they are set up to kind of combat modern day slavery, specifically in the UK, but also globally. So every couple of years they do a big multi-day sort of run. It's not a race, so you're not so it's not competitive, which
Yeah.
for that kind of first kind of event was really incredible because you you weren't focused on the clock, you weren't focused on the time. You're kind of, it was more that the focus was around sort of being part of the community. You're running with, you got to know everyone, in the race, because some days you would be at the front, some days you'll be kind of at the back, some days you'll be at the middle. So it was like it was a really sort of incredible sort of community to kind of, for as a say, I feel kind of quite privileged and lucky to kind of been part of that particular event, just because my entry into ultra running was in a really sort of happy, safe, kind of caring space.
Okay, no, that really helps, especially when you're sort of jumping into those bigger events, because there's so much you don't know
Yeah,
at that point. The logistics of those types of longer events is almost as tough as the physical part.
yeah. Trying to get your kit bag to weigh under a certain kind of level and stuff. It's like making sure you've got enough food. I'm a hungry boy, so those things are always tough.
Okay. And in terms of some of the other races that you've done, I know you've done Transvolcania. You also did a Ultra X Tanzania this summer, which was another 250 plus stage race. Tell me about that one.
Yeah, so that I think that was the first time they'd held an event there, and it was like running, like racing Africa was kind of top of my list. And so I've ran with Ultrex for a few times. I know the race directors quite well, so like knowing, like it was quite an easy call to kind of head there and kind of do the race, because I know that you're going to get looked after, and the races are well organized. I mean, I think multi-day ultras, I think they're one of the best ways to see a country, because we were running along paths and kind of trails which don't get that much kind of traffic. So you're getting to see kind of spots and running through villages and kind of townships, and you're seeing things that most people who will go to Tanzania won't see, because they'll go to the foothill, they'll go to the base camp of Kilimanjaro, up Kilimanjaro, then back out again. But we kind of, it was a kind of a proper immersion into Tanzania, and it was like, yeah, it was incredible.
Okay. Was that your first time down there in Tanzania?
Yeah, so I'm half Zimbabwean, so kind of my only other kind of jaunts to Africa have just been to see family in Zimbabwe. So
Okay.
this was the first kind of other African country I've gone to other than Zimbabwe. So it was really interesting to see.
Yeah, you get to do some proper touring. And
Yeah,
separate
yeah.
from the trail stuff, you've also run a couple of marathons this year. I think Barcelona and Berlin. How did those ones go for you?
Yeah, well, I've got a bit of a bee in my bonnet about I've like I say, I'm kind of slightly kind of getting to that point where fast marathons are going to start to become a lot harder. So
Yeah,
I set myself a goal to kind of run sub 3 this year.
yeah,
I I contracted COVID just before Barcelona, so I ran Barcelona with COVID. That
okay,
was I didn't really I hadn't kind of tested or kind of really undiagnosed, but I hadn't diagnosed at the time. But the first half went really well. I think I crossed the first half in 1:27. So
yeah,
and I felt good. And then about 4K later, like the wheels just kind of fell off. I kind of stood by the side, just kind of wondering where, I was like, oh dear, this doesn't feel right. And then
yeah.
yeah, and then I saw the 3 hour sort of pacing group just kind of steam past me, and I still did it in 3:30. So it was a long walk. It was with walking to the end. So it was still a good time, but I think
Yeah.
it was quite frustrating because I'd worked hard over the winter and I felt I was in a good spot. So yeah, I've really been kind of struggling the rest of the year with sort of the after effects of COVID. So I went into Berlin this year aiming just to kind of dip under, run a bit more conservative and just kind of dip under the 3 hour mark. And again, similar thing happened. Comfortable. And then I think my fitness is a bit like sort of if you're a Formula One fan, the hard compound tires, they're good. They're good for a long way, but as soon as they hit 60 laps, that's it. That's it. They go off, and like that, no more. So yeah. So that wheels fell off again, and that was so. I've signed up for Seville again in February, so it's going to be more marathon training, and I'm hoping to kind of do that and never run another marathon again, because I've ticked that box. But yeah, it needs to be scratched, I think.
Well, that sounds like a good plan, and you're picking some fast courses. Berlin's a fast one, and
Yeah,
Sevilla is blistering fast as well. So, no, best of luck in Feb for that.
yeah,
Uh, so, to go on to that sort of the main topic of our podcast today. Um, Road running is a part of the sport that has had elites from East Africa, North Africa, traditionally dominating the top end of the competition. In trail running, it's been a little bit more white Euro and North American centric. Maybe traditionally not as many sort of role models, elites at the top. As you got into the sport, sort of, what was your perspective in terms of who you were seeing out there in the trail running scene, and have you seen that changing at all since you've been running for a few years on the trails?
I mean, I guess terms of kind of composition, I mean, like, no, not really at the top end. I was in Chamonix for UTMB this year, so again, I kind of you like at the kind of top end of the field, you see kind of a complete absence of any real sort of like diversity at the top of the field. I mean, in terms of kind of real role models, I mean, they're very far and few between, especially in Europe. Hard to say there's not. I mean, I can't think off the top of my head of a sort of a black athlete who is kind of at the top of their game, who are kind of really sort of winning races out here. I mean, you've got some of the Kenyans running in the Golden Trail series.
Yeah,
I think Kenya had a good showing in Sierra Zinal this year. But
yeah,
again, I think from a European perspective, not that many. I know in the US you've got Corey Waltering, Adam Merry, so that you've got there's a few more in this scene over there. So, but yeah, I think I still think in the kind of time I've been kind of in the sport, kind of I haven't you haven't seen any kind of new people or new names, and I think that's probably indicative of where the sport is at grassroots level.
okay. And about the grassroots level, when you're showing up at races, big or small, what are you seeing in the middle of the pack, and what do you feel like the attitudes are towards sort of race and diversity just amongst the sort of regular runners?
I mean, I think we've seen a bit of a change in the last sort of 3 or 4 years. Again, going back to the work which Black Trail Runners have done to really sort of act as a voice out there. But before Black Trail Runners like really started, I mean, I only ever knew sort of a couple other sort of black runners, and they'll be the same faces that you'll see at all of the events. Say, I think with the work which we've kind of done, we've kind of noticed that you're starting to see more faces out there, more faces you don't know, or new people sort of join the sport because there's a bit of a more established sort of grassroots community who are there, who can provide that kind of safe space, or role models, or kind of that advice to kind of help you get into the sport. So I have seen a change, but say always, and kind of like the impatient part of you always wants change to be faster than it is.
So you mentioned Black Trail Runners, and you're wearing the awesome hoodie there.
Yeah.
It looks like Adidas is doing a cross promotion or is a sponsor of the organization. Tell us a little bit about BTR and sort of your involvement in it and sort of how it came about.
Yeah, so I mean, so Black Trail Runners was formed back in 2020, so kind of during that kind of lockdown period. There were six runners in the UK who kind of got together after the shooting of Ahmed Arbery and kind of decided that that was kind of a a kind of a hot moment in terms of people coming together and deciding, look, we need to do something. We need to find a way to be able to kind of create a space for us in these environments. So Black Trail Runners was formed in the summer. They sent an open letter out to all the race directors in the UK to kind of, again, seeking more equity and diversity in trail running. So that was a start, and that's how I got involved. I kind of, on Instagram, I saw this open letter and I thought, hey, that's something I want to be part of. So I was part of their first so I got a spot for their first race in Ultra X England in the Peak District. So I got a free spot for that race, and that was my kind of in with the group. Again, me being me, I don't tend to kind of stop there. I kind of tend to get I'm kind of 2 feet in all of these things. So I'm now one of the trustees, and that kind of goes on top of a very busy life. But again, I think it's important to kind of if you've got the ability and you've got the skills to kind of help out where you can. So yeah, I think we started off as a group on Instagram. There were a few kind of meetups during lockdown. That was obviously kind of quite difficult. The group was very much in terms of a kind of virtual group. Then as things kind of opened up again, we then had, so we have what we call trail taster days, where we do introductions to kind of trail running. Then that kind of progressed on. We've now got run leaders who host run clubs in all parts of the UK. So we've got run clubs. So that's a really good way for people to, if you haven't run before, come down and join a friendly group. And kind of, again, it's about providing a kind of that kind of safe space for people to kind of who may not have kind of ever thought about it, but saw something on Instagram or go, oh, actually, I do want to give this a go, and that's an opportunity for them. Up until we had our first race back in May this year, called Black to the Trails. That was incredible. Like I think we had about, I think it's 500 entries. So essentially the race was sold out, and that was an incredible day. So it was a first race in the UK with a start entirely sort of like a black sort of management director, and say I was actually running UTS up to Trail Snowdonia that day, so I wasn't able to come. So I was just looking on social media and just seeing videos, having massive FOMO. So I think we've proved in the short time that we've been operating and with the charity's been up, that there's a massive demand, but there are kind of barriers to access and reasons why like at that kind of grassroots level that participation hasn't been higher.
Yeah, no, and I want to talk about those barriers, but I'm really curious. It sounds like the demand was really sort of there, and the organization was able to grow organically very fast. What sort of runners did you see? What sort of participants did you see who were just seeing things on social media and coming out for a run? What was kind of the demographic profile of them?
So the demographic profile was interesting, actually, because I think it was majority, like, so we had, I think I don't have the numbers top of my head, but I think it's majority sort of blacks, I think, obviously. But then we had obviously sort of Black Trail isn't an exclusive group, so we have allies and kind of other ethnicities. So it was a massively sort of diverse in kind of terms of kind of other sort of non-white sort of faces at a race, and. But also there was a higher percentage of female runners there. So again, when we're looking at the kind of the top end of the sport, when we're like, there's probably a complete absence in terms of sort of like black female representation when you take into account intersectionality. So all those issues. Yeah. So again, it proved a lot. It proves a lot of things that we've been saying anecdotally, to say here's this incredible race, and look at when you market a race at the right demographic, with the right kind of setting, with the right kind of with distances, that you will, like, there's a massive demand.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's amazing. And what about ages? Was it mostly younger folks? Did it sort of run the gamut in terms of old and young?
Yeah, so again, it was so we had a 1K kids race. So again, making so again, it's a kind of trying to address that sort of that grassroots level. But say it was like age distribution was broad again. So it's kind of again, so you're looking at a very so if you take a sort of a European sort of trail race, like you're looking at kind of the main demographic is sort of white men aged between 35 and 45, and then not much kind of either side. When we looked at the race, you just had we had this kind of massive kind of spread of ages and demographic and races. So
Yeah.
I think it is a very different looking trail race to what's usually get, and I think that comes down to the work of the people involved in putting on the race, and again just creating something for which is for people outside of the traditional demographic, which I think lots of race directors kind of get caught into. So they don't they can't understand why the races aren't more diverse. It's because when you look at everything about and surrounding the race, you are only going to attract those types of people.
Yeah, yeah. And tell me a little bit about sort of other things that BTR has been doing. So obviously doing some sort of organizing for increasing participation, but anything else in terms of lobbying within the sport, working with existing races?
Yeah, so I mean, so again, I mean, we are kind of a kind of a bit of a conduit for kind of these discussions. So again, we've been having discussions with UK Athletics. So one of our trustees kind of works with UK Athletics, again, and we've had discussions with kind of other races and UTM and like UTMB. So, and again, where we are kind of very much in the UK. We're very much a point in contact for kind of people to reach out and kind of we get asked and spoken by race organisations and kind of a race kind of looking for advice. So we are very much kind of plugged into that behind the scenes. Um, and again, outside of that, I mean, I think one of our other kind of big moments this year is we took a team of 3 female runners to the main Adidas sort of mountain race called Infinite Trails in Austria. So we
Wow.
took a team of runners, and they absolutely destroyed the Austrian Alps. So again, I think it's a, a lot of the yeah, yes, you kind of got your kind of front face things, but there are other things that we should kind of doing behind the scenes also to kind of try and lobby and kind of make sure trying to open up this.
Um, so talking about barriers, it's difficult for, yeah, I'm a middle-aged white runner, difficult for me to think about what it would be like to rock up to some regular trail race, looking different from all the other participants. Um, what would it be like for a non-black runner to step into a black runner's shoes, and what sort of additional challenges do people who come from a different background face in the sport from your perspective?
I mean, I think it can be sort of really intimidating. I mean, I grew up in a town in the UK, and I was like a, it was a countryside town in the UK. So I kind of grew up used like it being the only person in a room, only black person. So like I grew up with the experience of being the only in a room. So
Yeah.
again, I feel like I was like again, I feel like in some instances I was kind of better equipped to kind of be able to go to these events and not kind of be able to kind of handle that. But I think again, if you're coming into this world of ultra running as a newbie, you not only have you got this kind of massive challenge, you kind of go to a start line, you're looking around and there's nobody that kind of looks like you. It can be kind of quite intimidating. And say I think like it's I'm sure everyone at the start line is a nice person, but again, we know how society. I think it'll be kind of disingenuous. It'll be disingenuous to kind of suggest that this wouldn't be intimidating. Very much the same, for example, if a white runner went to a start line and they were surrounded completely by black runners in a completely space was alien to them. So again, I think it's a lot of it is kind of it's difficult. It's difficult to kind of for people to kind of openly say that would be the case, but it can be intimidating.
Yeah, no, for sure. And as if a 250 or 100K sort of course ahead of you isn't intimidating enough. Just feeling a little bit isolated like that really adds another degree. Any tips that you might have for either other runners or race directors in terms of what they could do to foster a more sort of open and welcoming environment?
I mean, again, I'm gonna say if you are looking at that, so you're a black runner and you're kind of relatively intimidated, reach out to Black Trail Runners, join our Facebook group, like find our webpage and join us, follow our Instagram page, and again that because that there's a community out there who can put that arm around you and kind of let you know that you're not that you are welcome and that you won't be the only kind of person. From a race director's perspective, I think this is kind of it's a relatively kind of tough one because interest and kind of desire kind of wanes. So you noticed at the start that there was kind of like guess during the kind of height of the 2000 and the black lights, lots of people were kind of interested in what was going on. They were kind of a bit more kind of switched on. But then again, improving diversity requires work. It requires ongoing commitment to kind of deal with the barriers to entry. So
yeah.
some race directors will continue and they know and will continue to kind of work with us and continue to try and increase equity. Whereas for others, it sometimes feels like a extra work on top of what they want to do because let's be fair, they're already making money off what they're doing. So like the motivation for them is like it kind of wanes. So some it can be frustrating. It can be like with the challenges that you kind of face that some people are kind of receptive, understand, whereas you'll find other kind of like companies, races will kind of their interest is only surface level and superficial to kind of deal to kind of not necessarily tick a box, but just to show that they're engaged.
But I mean, anything, if you had sort of a magic wand, any specific actions that you would want to see race directors do, in terms of, maybe making sure that there's entry spaces available, or in terms of promotion marketing, what are the types of actions that you think would be the types of things that could make a difference?
I mean, the first thing you always do when you kind of look at a race, like for me, I'll scroll down, I'll go to their race page and I'll scroll through their pictures just to see, just to have a look and see what the makeup of that race looks like. And again, I think you'll notice the firms and companies that you can see they put a conscious effort to kind of to make sure that their promotion material, who they're targeting at, they've thought about it. They haven't necessarily just kind of gone down. Here's a picture of a guy at the top of a mountain. Ta-da! There we go. That's it. Because again, you go back. There's always that kind of maxim: you can't be what you can't see. So if all you see is a 35, 38-year white male runner, that's like in real terms, that's what you're going to get. So it's making sure that you're kind of reaching out. Again, I think when you look at the kind of the access. So again, it's if a lot of the kind of the black population in the UK are urbanized, so they kind of live in urban centres. So access to green spaces is limited. So how is a kid from Manchester supposed to get up to the Peak District to run a race? It's like in real logistically wise, it's not that great a distance. You're going to places which aren't remote. So if you perhaps have a putting on sort of like car sharing or bus services, or just making sure people can get to the start lines. Because at the moment you can really only get to races where you can drive up to a start line. So making kind of removing that access to races. I know there's certain races which I do in the UK race, and they will have and their start line might be like 1 kilometre away from a train station. All of a sudden, if you can get from the centre of London 30 minutes out on a train and you've got one can to the side, it becomes a different question, doesn't it? Like so that's another thing. And then again, I think you kind of look at the kind of skills aspect. Again, it's quite intimidating if you've never if you've never ran on up the side of a mountain. Like it'd be quite intimidating. And I say if you, for example, if you've grown up in an urbanized area, the chances of you sort of being in the mountains is kind of relatively low. So you haven't got those kind of those kind of basic kind of skills to be able to kind of get out there to, like, in terms of navigation. So you've got that kind of hurdle to sort of to jump across again, which is why like an organization like Black Trail Runners is really important, kind of like putting workshops on. And then also money, like financial access. It's expensive. I mean, like I'll sit there with a calculator and go through how much the kit cost in my pack to run a multi ultra. Yeah. Like when you factor everything in, I mean, it costs thousands to go out to Transvolcano and run that race. Yeah. Like hotel, accommodation, and flights to get 3 stones not to get into UTMB. Like that's like time off work, time to train. Yeah. So when you start doing that kind of multiplier financial impact, it's huge. It requires a lot of resource to be able to kind of do that. So I think that they're probably like, I think they're just that acknowledgement. So like in terms of like if I was a race organizer, I'd have a grant system where you would give people who deserve the opportunity, the ability to kind of to be able to to afford the kit, the shoes on your feet, to be able to kind of to also kind of be able to make space and time to train.
Yeah. That's really interesting. It's neat to hear some of those ideas, because they'd be great things to do to increase participation in the sport for people who don't already have access to it. But they're just also just good ideas.
Yeah.
Having good transportation to races. Having a program for people who can't afford the kit to be able to still have a path. Like these are. Yeah. They're just good ideas.
I mean, I think a lot of race directors don't think outside of their own. They don't think outside of their own race. So they don't appreciate all of the compound. Like, so again, all of these things which are just spoken about, they're all compounding. So once you start layering these upon, you end up, which for someone who's always been into trail running or doing this, to go, well, I got a pair of shoes, I went out, but you're forgetting all the other kind of benefits, which the provision benefits that you have had, which is probably why I'm relatively lucky at kind of 35 to be able to kind of jump into the sport. I reckon you have to kind of recognize that kind of privilege that I've had, and say I think it's cognizant on us who have privilege to kind of to do the work and kind of to do our best to kind of open up and try and make the sport I love more inclusive.
Okay, so Simba, we're going to get deeply personal here. I'm going to ask a series of rapid fire questions about you and your running. So I want short, crisp answers. We'll start with current favorite shoe.
Adidas Speed Ultra.
Okay. Favorite piece of trail running kit?
My new silver headlamp.
Okay.
Basically, it's basically like wearing the sun on your forehead.
Just make sure to take it off at the checkpoints, or else you might blind some volunteers. Gels or real food on the trail?
Depends how fast I want to go.
Okay. Favorite post long run meal?
Burger and chips, or fries,
Okay.
depending on where you're from.
Uh, Favorite track workout?
400s.
How many?
The last time coach set me 20.
Yeah, that's about right. Race result that you're most proud of?
I think surviving Transvolcania.
Okay, I know some folks who haven't, so no, that's a good one. It's a brutal course. And finally, a bucket list race. What's one you want to do before finally hanging up the shoes?
Yeah, I think I quite like to have a go at the big loop at UTMB.
Okay, there you go. Um, so no, thanks for that. I think our my questions are sort of wrapped up here. Really want to thank you for joining the podcast. It was great talking to you. Do you have any other projects or upcoming adventures that you want to give a shout out to? Any social media pages that you want to direct people towards?
Yeah, so you can follow me at Simba on Instagram. You can follow Black Trail Runners at Black Trail Runners. Um, Tickets for Black to the Trails, our now annual event, are on sale. So if anyone's thinking about wants to look at a more diverse race, we're having our next races in May next year in the UK. And yeah, I think that's it for me, really.
Okay, well, that's great, Simba. I really appreciate you joining us. And as I always, want to thank all the folks who helped put the podcast together. So big thanks to our talented producer, Sam Hill at Hill Adventures. You can find all the ITRA Trail Talks episodes on the ITRA YouTube channel and on Spotify. For more information about ITRA, you can go to itra.run. And that's it for tonight. Happy trails, everyone.